Hey, welcome on in, guys. Tobin here with you, and thanks for checking out the channel. Just got back from being boots on the ground. Your Miami Heat, they win tonight 117-105 over the Philadelphia 76ers in a fourth quarter takeover for the Miami Heat, a game that was pretty close back and forth, probably frustratingly so for many at home watching this. But you mind you, this was a game the Miami Heat did not have Bam Adebayo tonight. Still no Andrew Wiggins, even though it was hinted that he was going to be making a return at some point. And it was an interesting night at the Heat's house. Kind of cool for me. Got to see Patty the Batty Pimblett, who was in attendance. He was doing the rounds. I believe he was on the television broadcast. My boy Tommy Tig got a chance to sit down with Patty the Batty. We had Patty the Batty on couple weeks, 3 weeks ago, probably about 4 weeks ago, maybe a month ago when it was announced that he was the co-main event. I believe we'll get him this week at some point on the radio show, so stay tuned for that. We'll probably bring that on the channel here for you guys, which is why I didn't pester him, because I was told that we got one of those coming up in the holster, so I didn't feel a need to take Patty the Batty's time, but it was cool to see him in attendance nonetheless. This Miami Heat game, I think the big takeaway out of this game here today is just the performance of Kel'el Ware. Kel'el Ware today finishes this game with 19 points, 17 rebounds, and I think especially in the second half, I felt like his presence was really, really there and was making impact plays, a lot of putbacks, a lot of relentlessness on the rebounding. Was very, very impressed from the performance of Kel'el Ware, especially the one that he had off Bona off of a Anderson missed runner. Miami was really putting the hammer down on him. So his final bucket of the game, I was just like, that's a great exclamation point tonight. But even before that, I thought that he came into the second half of this game and I thought just made an impact defensively immediately. Like, comes right out of the gate, breaks up a lob where Grimes is trying to fight Bona, and he gets a steal. And then the next possession down, that leads to an Alec Burks three. And then the next possession down gets a block. And he's just bringing a lot of ferocity. And, I just found it impressive today in a game where Bam Adebayo was missing, that you were going to have to rely on him a little bit more. And how is he going to handle that test? Opposition notwithstanding, because this is, I get it, you're not taking on, like, he's not taking on Joel Embiid, and hell, he's not even out there taking on Andre Drummond, but you are out there and you need to make your presence known, and you have a game that you do have to win if you want to continue to keep your standings, and it's a needed performance by Miami. And I thought that Kel'el just did a fantastic job in so many places with big rebounds and big shots, and even some big time assists, setting up shooters. He just stepped up in a big way in a lot of ways today, and I just think you continue to see the growth there from time to time, even to a point where Miami was just trying to target him for a couple of lobs, and they would just rather foul him than get the building rocking, and people are so terrified of what he's able to do with that. So that by far was the most exciting thing of today's game, is that the rookie big man continues to have a very, very outstanding season. I hope that this ends up with him being rewarded for all rookie. I think that he deserves it. I think that for the standpoint of this year, that, I get it. It's not the most impressive rookie class in the world, and Castle's probably going to win rookie of the year. And, I probably should have cashed out early on my bet when he had like that 2-week run of being the favorite. But I really just like the polish that he has. And I like the fact that nobody is letting him settle. And Erik Spoelstra made this point today after the game with Kel'el about, that he was talking to me and said, I thought he could have had 20 rebounds, thought he could have had 9 blocks. I don't know why 9 was the number that he said. But Spo made it seem like he thought that Kel'el had a lot of blocks, which he didn't. He had 1 block on the game, and he had 1 steal, which kind of looked like a block because he broke up a lob. But it definitely set the tone in the second half, so I don't know if that was in Spo's mind. But I do think that obviously it's been a relationship that has had its tests because the rookie isn't just going to be given anything. And I think that you've very clearly seen both rookies haven't been given anything, him or Pella. Pella, I think, had a pretty strong first half for Miami to get things off to a nice start. Was finding his three-point shot, just bringing that tenacity with the steals and immediately to start the game today. Pella Larson in a nutshell, straight intangibles, just first possession of the game, Heat are about to lose it. He's already diving on the floor, keeps possession with Miami. They get to keep the ball back. And you're just wow. Just right. You don't have to lull into it. You don't have to need a couple warm up laps. Nope, boom. He's hitting it right from the get go. And I think that was impressive to see from this performance. Tyler Hero today, pretty rock solid from Tyler. The only thing that was a concern with him was the turnovers. Finished with 7 of those, but from an offensive standpoint, steady as they go. And I think that that he's also playing banged up. I think that he was probably trying to gut through this game a little bit because you knew Bam was out. It was weird. I gotta tell you, weird seeing Bam in street clothes. A good getup that he had today with all the jewelry and the sunglasses indoors. I don't picture Bam as a sunglasses indoors guy, but I'm not really used to seeing him anything other than a basketball jersey, quite frankly, because he plays all the time. So those guys, I mean, have you got to give a little hat tip to them on their durability. And then from the bench unit today, a lot of great performances. Duncan Robinson was an absolute sniper off the bench today, 5 of 6 from downtown, finished with 21 points, hit the Peppa's button today. Davion Mitchell, who just is a complete dog and is just relentless getting after it defensively. He had this step back today where he said Bona shaken to the ground nearly, and he was just peacocking and yapping the whole way down, deservedly so. He was giving Bona the business, dude. It was fun. And Mitchell had a couple of plays where it was he blows by this dude Reese, who's wearing the number 65. And I thought to myself, I don't think I've ever seen anybody wear the number 65 in a professional basketball game before. I don't think I've seen a lot of people with the numbers in the 60s, quite frankly. Luka wears 77. That's a little bit odd. That's very left tackle-ish. But I think it stems off of him not being able to get 7 in some way, shape, or form. I don't really know the story there. But it's an odd number. Usually basketball numbers, when they're getting that high up, it's a little bit weird. Once you get past the 50s, but 65, I was that's got to be the last number available. They just gave to that guy. Anyway, Mitchell blew past him, and then there was a block, which I initially thought live was Davion Mitchell, but it actually was Jaime Jaquez Jr. And I got to say for Jaime, I got to give him some props here in a second. But anyway, the block then leads to Davion getting the ball. He gets it right down to Duncan Robinson, who gets an and one, and just he's giving you the Dunkyard dog look. He's holding up the 3, giving the and one. And those two I really felt put the absolute hammer on the game was Davion Mitchell and Duncan Robinson. But I'm not going to lie. Jaime Jaquez Jr. started the fourth quarter, and he shot a 3 from the corner, which he's not good at shooting threes, but he's particularly bad shooting from the corner for whatever reason. I know that's supposed to be the easy route for shooters. That's where you're supposed to, that's your baby step. That's where you're supposed to say, here comes the airplane, learn how to shoot. He hit the side of the backboard, and I really thought to myself, I'm I don't know if there's any coming back from this. But those were only inside thoughts. Now I guess they're outside thoughts because you've all heard what my inside thoughts are. But a couple possessions later, Lonnie Walker, who just was an absolute demon today for the Philadelphia 76ers, the former Miami Hurricane, loves putting on a show for his former collegiate town. he hits a three, put Philly up by 1, and you're like, oh man, here we go, dude. And Jaime Jaquez Jr. answered right back with a 3 on the wing, and you're just like, oh. Lonnie Walker would then tie things up at 88 apiece, but then that block by Jaime Jaquez Jr., which basically led to the Heat starting to get on their own little run with the Davion Mitchell bucket and the Duncan Robinson and one, was a huge play by Jaime Jaquez. And he kind of went out on a high note. So what was an ugly performance ended really well for him. So props to him. And, Duncan and Davion, I really thought, took it home absolutely for Miami. But Kel'el's performance was definitely the thing to write home about. Here was Erik Spoelstra on his rookie big man.
You can trust him, to compete and to try to do the right things. He's a glass eater, that for sure. He finds his way, around the basket too for, these really important relief points, for us. He's gaining confidence. Today, I thought he did a real good job of facilitating also for us. Not only screen setting, but, when he had his catches in a similar place where Bam was, he was able to deliver the action reliably. And that helps, our versatility offensively. I told him it would have been, he brought us in, and the first thing he said to me is that I think I could have had 20-plus rebounds in this game. I said, well, that would have been great. I think 19 points, 19 rebounds, and 9 block shots. I think he had an opportunity, and I told him that. He could have had a few more blocks right at the rim. They're getting there past our first line of defense, and he has good instincts there. That would have been, if I were to nitpick, how many did he end up with? How many blocks, Tim? Oh, yeah, 8 more blocks in this game. I think he would have had that opportunity.
And the warehouse himself, also has the high expectations.
I mean, I'm a rebounder, in itself. I pride myself on that. Just trying to go grab everyone. Some of them slipped away, I guess you could say. But, yeah, it was possible for me to get 20, or if not more. But.
And then Tyler Hero, I asked him about the idea that even on a big game, he's not satisfied. And these were Tyler's thoughts. And a guy who's really put his arm around Kel'el Ware from the start of this season, been in that spot of being a highly touted rookie first-round pick. And Tyler gave thought onto why they're even giving more expectation to Ware.
He was also talking about with Kel'el that he could have 20 rebounds, like on a big night that he has. He wants to even shoot for more. What do you think that says about him at this young age?
I mean, we don't know what the limit is. That's why we're on him so hard. He's obviously going to be really, really good in this league. So we're on him, hard every day. No matter what, no matter how good he plays, we're still on him.
Vital has become what Andrew.
So a nice win for Miami. The one last thing that I want to point out, this was an interesting one. So Spo was asked after the game about Kyle Lowry. And I'll give the answer, the back and forth here from Erik Spoelstra on Kyle.
Kyle Lowry was making his way down to you with about 5 seconds left, and you guys had the moment.
Yeah.
How nice is it that you can have those with guys in the league?
Yeah, I always I understand how it ended with Kyle, but, there's some really good moments, and Kyle and I developed a strong relationship, and that was going back all the way to that Africa trip. So we have a bond that's going to transcend, this, and he lives down here. So, actually we caught up for a while after the game in Philly. We're going to be traveling in the same circles, because of his kids and everything. And I always root for him and his family. He's just a good dude.
But it was interesting because, we made such a thing this year about Jimmy and his interaction with his former teammates. And obviously, Jimmy and Kyle are kind of tied because Jimmy really wanted Kyle Lowry here. This is the godfather of his daughter. He has a very, very close relationship with Kyle Lowry. And it was interesting because things didn't feel like they ended great with Kyle. Things had kind of reached a weird spot in that year. Remember, you came into training camp and Kyle, was he going to be the starter? And then he kind of got the job by default. And then, just had one of those years where like he wasn't scoring at all, even in like the low sense that Kyle Lowry would score already. But, he was, everybody else says, basketball savant, does all the little things, gets everybody set up right, gets the offense up and moving, head up. He's looking, but yeah, he was getting up there in age, and it kind of felt like where Miami was at and floundering in the middle of the season, that a trade had to be made, and they need to infuse a little bit more juice on the offense. A la, you get the Terry Rozier trade, and it's arguably one of the worst trades in Miami Heat history, and that really isn't just a talent for talent thing. That also is the idea that the Miami Heat attached a pick to an expiring Kyle Lowry deal, which I really... I still don't understand how that was needed for like 3 months of Kyle Lowry. You needed to attach a pick to that, especially a first round one. But, we've done that song and dance. But I thought the thing that was interesting about it is like, people made it out to seem like Kyle Lowry was a bit of a locker room. It almost felt like a locker room cancer and a malcontent. And I know that like he didn't have like the greatest relationship with the media. I didn't experience anything. I've always said this with others. I have no issue with what anybody else said because that's their experience. My experience with Kyle Lowry has always been pretty positive. But it was interesting. Like he was there today, like hobnobbing with all the security guards, was hobnobbing with all the former coaches, even in between the half times and breaks. And he has a really good relationship with a lot of his former teammates, particularly Bam Adebayo, a guy that, he worked out with in Las Vegas for the in-betweens on his years. He would go and meet Kyle Lowry while he was going out to Vegas, and he'd be like, oh, where are you at? And they'd be at the UFC Performance Center together, and they would get workouts in together, and good relationship with Tyler Hero and a lot of guys on the team. And I think that was just interesting because you think of him as kind of tied at the hip to Jimmy and would be Team Jimmy. And obviously Jimmy had like the frostiest reunion of all time with this Heat team and breakup, which, made Kyle Lowry's ending with the Miami Heat seem like a Hallmark card. But it was interesting today, seeing just Kyle seem pretty, pleasant in his reminiscing of being in Miami. Now, obviously the Sixers stink, and Spo said today he lives down here and doesn't hate being in South Florida. But I think that everybody who had like this thought of like, oh, it was all miserable with him, I don't know, like it's not what you see with him, the way that he interacts with everybody. I thought that it was pretty pleasant to see that today. And I think that you've seen this a couple of times. We know that the meme ending that he had with Bam Adebayo, but then he has, he's kind of messing with his fit today after the game and all that. And yeah, it does kind of make you wonder about the ending and being like, I know where things were at that time, and even Spo made reference to the ending. But man, seeing where they're at right now, like would they have just been better off riding it out? Obviously, like hindsight is 20/20 on steroids because Terry Rozier ends up never playing in that season in the playoffs. So obviously, but I'm saying even if Terry Rozier did, would they have been better off just riding it out and just dealing with whatever was there? And honestly, would they have had a clearer window even into Jimmy, like having that pipeline to him? I don't know. But it was I thought that was kind of like one of the interesting side stories of today is that Kyle Lowry seemed to really dig being back in South Florida and seeing all of his people down here and all the people around the arena was very eye-opening to see a guy who seemed to enjoy just being back in the building and being around some familiar faces. But either way, the most important thing is the Miami Heat got the win tonight and now set themselves up for a pretty big game coming up on Wednesday against the Chicago Bulls, and then we will see where the chips fall in this whole play-in scenario.